Alrighty folks, so a friend of mine said that this type of content is good for feeding the algorithm, so here we go. The accent is optional, but maybe that could be part of it too, I don't know. So here we are, the way of the grain and why it's important. So kudos to creating content that you consume, because I may have been taught this when I was a chap, but I didn't hang on to it. Having a little scroll there, having a little consume, but consuming that which aids the creation. Different approach. It's, here we flip around here. It's the grain of timber. So I've just grabbed timber for the sake of grabbing timber. I've always appreciated a good grain, never thought of it much than it just looks good, right? So here we are learning. So you can see here, and I understand that someone out there is like, what have you been sleeping under a rock, mate? Well, maybe you have, right? It's just sometimes you don't pay attention to things until you really actually need to pay attention to them. So I got these sleepers, and this fella was showing us, well, he's teaching his son, but also teaching us, that when you go to a lumber yard and you're looking for wood, especially here at the end, is to check the grain, right? Especially if you're doing structural work. So this one, for the purpose, is a contender, because one of these beams is going to be the vertical beam for the crane. So now I'm looking at the grain, right, in regards to do I load it, like which way do I make sure that I have this up. So this one has potential, but you can see the way I'm making the assumption based on just intuitive thinking, that this wood is the outskirt of a trunk, right? So it's not the heartwood. Otherwise, I don't understand how you'd be able to see these cores where a branch would be growing out. So this has to be the outer part of a tree trunk. So where was the one I was looking at? So this one here. This one here is a potential candidate because of the way that they arch up. Right. There's a little bit of compaction there in the grain, and that's 800 from that end to that end, which, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, to any of the ladies tuning in, that 800 is a fantastic measurement. It's from the outside of that 800 in is very close to being top dead center, right? Now I'm positioning these as best as I can to be actually a little behind center, because we've got the big old housing under here, right? We flip this up. Oh, there he is, the big boy. Look at that big old tractor engine. So pretty much that's your flywheel in there, right? So I've done a little bit of research, but before that I'm already giving consideration to that being the heaviest part of thereabouts of the engine. So if I was to pick this up in the dead center, there's a good chance that still the engine will tilt that way, which is okay because we want to get to the sump. All right. So it's finding a way to get a strap. This is still the tricky part. I need to find a way to get a strap under there. Right. Connect the two ends of the strap. So basically I'm creating a sling. And then a sling on the front end. And then connecting that. So what I thought would just be, oh yeah, whack, whack, whack. It's all these little intricacies along the way. But hey, an inch today is more than a centimetre yesterday. So that means we're getting some. So that's where we're up to, right? Finally was able to, I didn't have to cut this angle at all. It's a little bit of, tweaking, shaving this end, just creating an angle cut that way to fit back in, because right about here is the diesel filter. It's freaking right there. So we've cut it in a way so that this goes in underneath. We haven't altered the total length. So my theory is, as long as the total length is intact, then cutting a bit off the top doesn't really matter, because the force is going to be going down and out. Okay. So we're able to get it butt there. We're very close to being square, 90 degrees, like very close, very, very close. Like literally, the expression, a bee's ding dong off. Okay. And then sliding that beam. So what I'm sharing with you, the way of the grain is important, is that. So there's that. So beam's going across like this. It's tricky doing this in reverse. So around about there where my hand is, that's where that arch, if you remember, in the grain. So that's my thinking. If we're going against that's going to be stronger than if the grain was in an arch. So that I'm going with, and there's a good chance that can fatigue, and it's just the way I'm thinking of it all, right? The way of the grain and honouring the grain. And based on what that fella said, obviously the closer the grain, the more integral strength that is in the wood. And I'm like, oh, geez, man, that does make sense. I've never taken something that detail into consideration. It's just wood was wood, right? But then again, I haven't done this type of work to a level where I have needed to pay attention. When I shared with you all the other day about figuring out, getting an idea of which way the tree was growing based on these knots, right? And the way that the knots are, that's how the branch was coming. So it's giving an idea of, okay, that's the tree. So we want that. We want to be going up with the grain and putting load coming down on the grain. And you can see there's a little arrow to remind myself, like that's where you put your cut. So what we're going to do, we're not going to do the L brackets. I'm just going to get a scrap bit of wood and go across there, maybe a bit of 4x2. I'll talk to a local company up the road. They're doing a full strip down. Just saw the boss man. Just walk over and, hey, you're the boss man? You're the one to talk to? Everyone has a joke, but one fellow will say, no, here, the boss is in here. I'll just say, here you go, mate, I've got an old boat and I'm just looking for some, scrap 4x2. It looks like you guys are tearing down walls, and, that's perfect wood for what I need. Just for a bit of framing and a bit of support while I'm getting things in order. are you cool with me coming onto the property and just sort of helping myself? Right? Like, yeah, mate, go for it. Like, anything there and anything there. And he's like, oh, you got that? You need any of that? You can take that, you know what I mean? So it's really simple. Just ask. Just ask. Be surprised. So that's what we're up to. I just want to get that beam going. And then here's another little cool scrolling again. Good old scrolling. As you get duck. So how did it go again? Oh, you see, got your sandpaper, right? Lay your sandpaper down, and then you put the duct tape on the back end of the sandpaper, right? You have a little bit of overhang, but then that overhang folds back onto itself. So that'll give you working tabs on the duct tape. Does that make sense? And so the good thing for here, someone would say, oh, you get a chisel, mate. And you're probably right. You're probably right. You know, I bet you're right. Just get a chisel. But I'm like, hang on. Remember? Well, let's do what we can with what we have. So I've got plenty of sandpaper and I've got plenty of duct tape. And then, can you imagine what will occur? The sandpaper will be like that. So I'm creating a belt of sandpaper. One hand will be on this side, one hand on this side, and I'll be shimmering backwards and forwards. Because I could get a bit of wood and going, and it's, oh man. I've already had to go with the rasp file. And then that came up in my, and I went, hang on, that would probably work quite well. Right? Because I'm getting backwards and forwards motion, but by having it on the tape and having one hand here and one hand here, that's going to give me that downward pressure. Will, I believe, increase the downward pressure. How are we going here? 12 minutes. I sure know how to chin wag, do I? Eh? Do I not? We are getting there, folks. So that plank of wood, and then you had two bolts just going through, and there's some scrap ply, and I'll use scrap ply as a backing plate with washers. Okay. So, but you know, basically that's just to create a reinforcement of this downward pressure. I was going to put the bracket in. I do not really want to be screwing in the vertical of where this cross beam's going. Now I could, and someone say, oh, it wouldn't matter, Matt. It might, just by looking at the grain. By screwing there, or even just doing a drill I'm thinking that has the potential to split. Might not. I might be over engineering this. However, I'd rather that be the case, because that chappy down there is heavy. That's out of a Fordson tractor, late 50s, early 60s tractor engine, still going strong. You'll be guilty. And that's all we need to do is to lift this old boy up so we can have a look at the oil pan. And I spoke to another marine mechanic. He says, oh yeah, we're actually doing that today. I'm like, oh, you beauty. So that means that I can source the part through them, and it's going to cost us some money. But that means we're back up and running, and then we can just pull around a little bit. But once this engine's in, that's the next is steering, making sure that's all proper. Nav lights, get them all wired back in, and then be working on the anchor, the MUIR, MUIR, anchor winch, motorized anchor winch. So that's sequence of events. The nav lights might be, maybe we'll swap. We'll go engine, anchor, winch, lights, and then that way we can just do a day run and get the hell out of Dodge. Because after today's events, I'm not keen on this town. Well, it's a city, it's not for me, folks. But when in Rome, as the saying goes, you just got to put up. You just got to soldier on. And like I said today, I said something really. Sometimes I just go into a Super Saiyan guru, that I over guru myself, and I actually forget what I say. But I said something really good, so I'm sticking to it. So be good, be great, be brilliant, learn along the way. It's okay. I'm doing that. Don't be ashamed of it. And just keep doing what you can with what you have to lead you to where you'd rather be, to lead you to the outcomes you seek to obtain, achieve, and or acquire.